The font for this project started off as a little name like this that I got from the internet. I put some details in the download. I blew it up on my scanner printer to about the size I wanted, but I realised it was a bit thin. These areas here are short grain, and I thought in wood that's going to be quite weak. So the next thing I did was to actually beef it up. I took the font and I went over it in black so I could see the sort of strong silhouette of it, made it much thicker. And then I went round and I drew the outlines very carefully, and then I made, using a light box, but you could use a window, I made an accurate outline of the letters themselves. So I now have my letters, and then I think you can see that they're just lightly glued on. So I played about with the arrangement, adjusting them till I got something that looked quite good. And then my final iteration, if you like, is this, and this is what I cut out and glued onto my wood here. So what I've also done is I've added a line around, because this is the background we're going to take away, leaving a sort of frame around it. I used my set square because of course this breadboard is really nice and square. But what I've also done is I've taken a scribe, which is just a sharp point, and run it on this line using the set square. So I've got a really sharp edge here to work up to. I'm going to hold it in the vise like this, padded to protect it, and I'll have it this way up so you can see it better. So with that, we're ready to start carving. I'm going to use my V tool and line in just on the inside of the waist of this line. Before I start, let me just remind you of something, that if you're going across at a diagonal on the grain like this with the V tool, because the grain is running in this direction, one side of this cut is going to be good and the other side is going to tear. You're going to go against the grain, like on one side. So make sure you put the side with the clean cut grain against the subject. This is quite hard wood, and the chances are I'm going to need a mallet for this, but let me just start it off. So I'm going to run just on the outside of this letter, so fairly accurately, but because it's waste, what I can do is I can take a second cut and just improve it so that this cut goes beyond the letter fairly accurately up to that line. So I would probably do all the cross grain cuts like this at the same time. Now the depth we're going to is only about 1/8 of an inch. We don't really need to go very deep. The mallet is good at this point because you can just float it into the corner. It's about 1/8 of an inch. So these cuts as you go along should be about the same depth across the board. So this and this should be the same. You don't need to tilt it, because what we're going to do is we're going to make this angle about 10 degrees. So the wall of the letter is going to be slightly sloped. So you can keep it square as you come up to the edge. So I would come and do all these, stopping short best I can. This is pretty hard wood. Now this one, because that's sloping like this, the correct way to do this would be coming downhill in this direction. If you're not sure, make a little cut in the waist so you can check that. So there you go. Now we do the same here. I'd come from the outside in. If you're not sure and the grain seems to be tearing, you can just leave a bit more gap space. I'll get in the way of the camera if I do it, but I will come in this way. I'll turn it round so that I can finish off this little corner on this side Make sure you don't go into the letter. Curves, the same. Now I've got to think again, if I'm coming in this direction, which is a good side, which isn't. And in this case, the good side is against the letter, like this. So I can just run that round. Like so. And on the inside, I'll have to come back this way, so I'm going to turn it round for that. A little piece like this, I will take a little bit out, but I'm not really expecting much accuracy with this tool. On this curve like this tool doesn't like it because it's got a straight chisel bit here, and so it likes a slow curve, but really doesn't like a tight curve like this. So I will do my best to get a little bit of a lining in going on here, but away from the edge. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to work all the way around all these letters, turning the board around as I need to, making sure these lines are all the same depth as far as I can. About 1/8 of an inch will be plenty. I've turned the board around. That lets me carve in the right direction more easily. And this is a tricky line here because the grain might be going with or against it. So make sure that the good side, again, in this case, is to the outside here. This is a bit we want to keep. Very carefully along here. You don't have to do this in one cut. You can make a couple of cuts. Be careful of the junctions here where they're tight. You can stop short of those if you want. But the important thing is to try and be as accurate as possible, because it makes the next stage of setting in these letters more easy. This bit here is a little bit in the middle of the A, it's tiny. I'm just going to leave that and I'll figure out another way of working on that later. Here's the carving at the end of the lining in stage. Got a nice even line around all the subject. The next stage will be to lower some of this background here.